2014, and we're seeing we had a rainfall overnight, fairly decent heavy rainfall overnight, and we're seeing all of this area. We're now 100 meters north of, upstream of the Four Seasons Drive culvert, and as you can see, everything is entirely flooded. It looks like from what we've seen, what we see, the mud levels were at probably the highest they have ever been. Certainly approaching the highest they've ever been. It's looking across at my neighbor's property with his fence where he keeps his dog, make sure the dogs don't go down the mud. Well, the mud has now gone up past the edge of his fence level. It has been, like I say, the flooding is higher than it has ever been. So obviously this culvert guard and drain is just as useless, inadequate for this job as before. This is still May 13th, 2014, and this is right at the Four Seasons drain, where we had this culvert guard put in, and the water level is obviously the same water level we just saw from upstream. The water level here is without a doubt the highest that I've ever seen it. We're looking across at Hans Vermeulen's property, and it goes, looks like the mud level is way up on his embankment, and that's something I've never seen. I'll have to talk to Hans and see if he's ever seen it that high. And we're looking down here, and you can see right here, this is the handrail that's sitting, that's in place, mounted on top of that concrete structure. That's the handrail. It has been totally covered, and you just look at all the logs and debris that have floated down. It's just a disaster. Absolute disaster. This is still May 13th, 2014, and now we're at the Forest Vale Drive culvert, and you can see the floodwaters are just enormous. This culvert guard is useless, and once again the water levels up here at Forest Vale are, boy, that's not that I live up here, but this is when I've come up to check out the water levels and the flooding. This is about as high as I've ever seen it up here either. This is just amazing. I'm looking down to see if I can possibly see this handrail on top of that concrete structure they put in. I don't see it. I don't see the handrail anywhere. So it would appear that the water level is, in fact, even right now, and this is about 8 o'clock in the morning, and the water levels have definitely receded. This is probably it's over top of the handrails, I guess. I don't see handrails anywhere. This is the afternoon of May 13th, 2014. We're just seeing, you know, just the flood damages at the back of my property, and we're just looking at the mud levels. It is absolutely extraordinary. My thoughts earlier this morning was that this is the highest flood levels we have ever seen. I can confirm that that is absolutely true, and the mud level deposits are about the highest we've ever seen either. Just look at how wide this channel is now. It used to be about a little over a meter wide, easily 2 meters, 2.5 meters wide. Just extraordinary. Wow, and I'm walking in about 5 inches deep of mud. You can see these the footprints here in the mud. It's like 5 inches deep. Just extraordinary damages in this flooding. This is of course where the creekway goes underneath that fallen arch of the tree. And as you can see, all of the debris is piled up in front of that, blocking all of the water flow there. And you also look at all of the surroundings here in the mud level. It's just astounding. As I'm approaching this fallen tree, the mud levels are now about 10 inches deep. So this is where the creekway goes underneath this fallen tree, and you just look at the amount of branches and debris that is piled up here. And it just continues on downstream. This is really extraordinary. Here is something that I never imagined that I would ever see, and that is this fallen tree. And if you look at the big end of the tree, that used to be on the other side of the creek. So the enormous amount of floodwaters and the depth of the floodwaters totally floated this gigantic tree and took it all the way across to the opposite side of the creek bank. Incredible. Wow, the mud levels on the creek bank, easily 10 inches deep. So now we're, of course, right at the culvert guard, and we can see that it is this whole entry basin is entirely filled with debris. Without a doubt, the highest, this is the highest flood level that we have ever seen here. In all the years we've had flood damages, this is without a doubt the highest level. You can just see how much that the mud level, of course, has just covered the entire entry 150 meters back from this culvert. So this is the afternoon of May 13th, and we're now at the Forest Vale Drive culvert, and we see that, of course, it has had massive flooding, and we just see enormous amounts of debris, and the entire entry is filled with sediment. My thoughts are very close to the top of this culvert guard entirely. We see some of the quarry rock on the other side, and the water is totally eroded around that. The mud going up the hill is like I felt this morning. The mud levels were probably as high as they had ever been. And we just see an enormous result of erosion, high water flows, and it's pretty easy to see. What we saw this morning was everything, the water levels had come right up to the top of these handrails, and we can see the results of that. It's covered with leaves and stuff at the top of the handrail. So that is how high the water got this morning. Just amazing. So often we've been told that you cannot have horizontal bars for the culverts in Ontario. I've never ever heard any specific directive as to where this rule comes from, but in fact I've seen many in Ontario, and here's an example of horizontal bars at a culvert in Ontario. Now certainly this is at the exit side or the discharge side of the culvert, so we'll just go around and see what they have at the entrance to this culvert. Okay, so now we're at the entry side, the water entry side of this same culvert, and yes, there are horizontal bars here, and they're spaced probably 6-inch separation vertically, which would allow leaves, a lot of leaves, to carry on through and not be stopped anyway. And of course it gives you that just ladder-like safety feature that if you're in deep water you can just climb out just right like a ladder. And so yeah, this is in Ontario, and you know what? This is in City of Burlington. As if we would be surprised at being told that it couldn't happen. It's probably quite common in City of Burlington. Since 2005, when 2 culverts were excavated and new drainage was added, it did not reduce the flooding. And this resulted in Terry Spearn coming within 3 minutes of drowning when he got stuck in the mini culvert at Four Seasons Drive in 2008. Still, the City of Burlington steadfastly refused to acknowledge that this draining culvert guard was inadequate and neglected to investigate the reasons that these 2 culverts were continually being immersed in sediment following large rainfalls, which results in flooding the approaches to the culverts. When the causes of the upstream soil erosion and subsequent area flooding were shown to the City of Burlington staff and councillors in September 2012, they still blocked any discussion in that regard. They also blocked access to the dates that the City of Burlington made these changes that produced these damaging results, until the Freedom of Information Act was used to get the information. After implementing new culvert guarding and a culvert approach design at Four Seasons Drive in 2012, it still resulted in inadequate drainage and continued to flood the areas adjacent to the culvert. Nevertheless, this same culvert guard design has now been implemented at the Forestvale Drive culvert, which will have the same results of inadequate drainage plus immersed in upstream soil, which will again flood the adjacent properties. More importantly, the drowning hazards have been maintained, endangering our citizens. And should anyone drown in either location, it's unquestionable that the City of Burlington will be held responsible, as it has been the result of water drainage changes that they made in 2000. This responsibility will impact the mayor and councilors, city engineering staff for potential criminal charges, and certain large financial liability penalties. Still, City of Burlington are somehow choosing to cling to these risks, as well as the potential of damaging reputation of this municipality for many years to come.